that connection line, how relevant or important might that be for determining down the road?
I think it would be good to get data for both. And if we can't get it ourselves, we can reach out to the main broadband coalition to get that. But certainly those numbers are overwhelmingly underserved. And even with when you have a few of those Starlink users take the test, I've seen that they've had really good speeds. They're paying incredibly high prices for internet. So another one of the big criteria that's going to go into these grants is the pricing in and of itself. When you look at if you want to have a municipally owned or an ISP owned, you certainly want to look at how much that's going to cost your residents, as well as what are the speeds that are going to become available. But from what I've gathered, reading just a bit of the information that Sandy shared with me, if you're all on the same line and there's no fiber in either one of these towns, then the cable speeds are all going to be relatively similar. And, it seems like they're going to be relatively low.
There is some fiber, but I know it probably hasn't been represented on the speed test data. For example, I just got a call from the town office yesterday. Consolidated did finally do the install for them with fiber. So I know there's fiber around, but there's no fiber internet service really being offered to consumers. I think it's mostly businesses, and I don't think there's many businesses that have taken advantage of it because probably of the cost of getting it through Consolidated.
Yeah. And that's certainly another thing that you're going to want to look at when you talk about this municipally owned network and getting hooked up with the Down East broadband utility. It should really be attractive for both parties. So you've mentioned that you want, your cause to be attracted to them because they hold this utility, and you want to be included in that service. But you also want to know that it's something that your residents want to do, and they're going to be able to pay for it, and there's going to be a considerable uptake. Because I think one thing that the Down East broadband utility struggled with is they thought there was going to be a higher uptake than there actually was, at least in the beginning. And so the state wants to make sure these projects are going to be sustainable and there's not going to need to be continuous taxpayer investment just to keep these lines running.
No, Dan came and he spoke with us. He said now originally they were looking at a 20-year payoff, but they're ahead of schedule now. So their uptake seems to have at least exceeded what they had originally planned at this point. But yeah, I don't know. Tom?
I just had a thought. I've spoken to a realtor, and we might want to reach out to realtors. I know he was saying that people coming into the area, one of the first things they ask is, do they have internet, and what type of internet? And a lot of them have not purchased because of that. So they might be a good source just to go to some of the realtors and ask what they've gotten from reaction from people trying to buy.
Yeah, that is a double-edged sword. Just absolutely, I agree. It is a value, it is an asset, and it does make things attractive to people who do want to move into the area. And I just mentioned the caveat that I've mentioned before. There are people in this area who don't want to make it more attractive to people from away, and are willing to, what is it? Do something to their nose to spite their face. So that sort of, that mentality exists, and I'm not saying that it's, I agree, Sandy, we do want to attract young families. I think, as I've made the counter argument to that, we lose a lot of kids out of state because there aren't opportunities here for them. And having good internet is only going to help improve the opportunities and perhaps improve retention of some of our young individuals. So, okay. Was there anything else here? I think that's pretty much everything I had for Winter Harbor and survey data updates. Information gathering, did everybody get a chance who wanted to look at the RFI?
I talked to Bob Bastinto, and he is still recouping from his hospital visit, but he's going to be going over that, and he might send in his review of that to you or the committees as well.
Okay, because I would like to move forward with that. So if you do talk to Bob, and if he's got a chance to review it sooner, as soon as is practical, I just think we need to move forward as quickly as possible, because we want to make sure we're moving. We don't want to stall out. So, but outside of that, Thomas, do you have any insight on this? RFI is basically just to go out to existing internet providers, telling them basically, we need in the entirety of our towns 100 by 100 minimum internet service, and can you provide it? If not, do you expect to be able to provide it? And if so, when? Those are the sorts of questions that it asks, and maybe the two of you have some input on the best way to proceed.
Yeah, so just to be clear, we all want to get fiber in these communities, right? Strictly fiber?
I believe the committee, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I believe our goal is to get fiber, because we recognize fiber is the most future-proof way to do it, if not the only practical way to do it.
Sure. So I think sometimes when you leave that up to the ISP and ask for something around 100, we're all talking about fiber, and 100 should be fiber. But there might be some wiggle room for these ISPs to say, we'll come in and we'll upgrade the infrastructure, and we'll try and get you close to 100, or, we'll lay fiber to certain areas of town and then hook cable onto that fiber, and that'll increase your internet speeds. But, there are ways that they can upgrade their technology and come really, really close, but it's not going to be future-proof. Fiber is way more scalable than any of the cable or mixed cable and fiber or whatever the deal is. So I think with the RFI, if you strictly want fiber, it should be strictly, 100 and up symmetrical fiber speeds. So fiber should be something that you
Specify
in that agreement. And really all you can do is go from there. They'll want to know that they're going to have a good enough uptake to make it profitable for them to lay these lines. But with matching funds from the state, it could be a very profitable project. I mean, it probably is going to be, I think, but there's still some hesitancy from these ISPs to work in areas with less people just because they won't make as much money. But no, I think that's a great way to do it. Are you guys, what's the timeline for bidding on a grant? Is your goal to get a grant? And then what grant would you be interested in? Is it more of a planning grant? Is it an infrastructure grant?
I think probably the next step, once we know what the options are for us, is to probably do the planning grant. But we would like to move quickly to get it built as much as possible. I do believe the committee is certainly of the opinion that we want fiber, but I will say, for the benefit of my co-chair who is not here, he has done a good job reminding us that hybrid fiber cable is something that Spectrum is running out, and there are improvements there. I don't know, maybe the committee wants to chime in right now. Do we want to specify fiber as the technology?
I would think you'd want to go with a hybrid, just so you'll scare them off. You give them wiggle room as well.
So not to specify the technology. Yeah. And I know it's kind of bad practice sometimes to try and write a specification so tight that it really intentionally precludes. So I think it's mostly just to find out what the options are from the internet providers. It's not to say that we're going to go with them. I still think, for the most part, the majority of the people on the committee are more interested in having local ownership, because then, like you said, if we have fiber and it's future proof, if we need to make improvements, then we can do it. But if it's not our own network, we're always, as I've said, beholden to the internet provider to make those improvements. So you get to 100 by 100, but say in a few years you need something faster, and you might be waiting 10 or 12 years for them to even consider improving it further. So town meeting to vote on funding needs to be ready by May at latest. Okay. Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah, so I think that's a completely fine way to do things. And if I can provide a little bit more information about the grants that are coming up, there should be several grant rounds, and they'll roll out over the next, 2 or so years. One is closing sometime late October, early November for planning and infrastructure grants. It seems like there's already a lot of work being done, a large amount of headway in the realm of community engagement that a lot of the planning grant funds would be focused around. So it's a program that the MCA is rolling out, and they're going to work with these towns over the course of 12 or so months to do a lot of the community engagement pieces, and then fund things like gap analysis. But more than likely, the MCA is going to have people in place where they can do the gap analysis to limit the cost involved in these projects. So something like gap analysis is going to be attractive to have if you were to put out like an RFP to a service provider, so that they can better understand your immediate needs and they don't have to do that work themselves, because there's a cost involved with that. But you're kind of in that in-between space. If you were to have a service provider ready and already have a gap analysis, and we already do the community engagement, we have good speed tests, we have really good survey data, you might just be able to roll right into an infrastructure grant, and in a space that's, competitive.
Now, here's a thought, Thomas. Obviously, we're the Schoodic Peninsula Broadband Committee, so we're Gouldsboro and Winter Harbor, but we were talking earlier about reaching out to other communities on either side of us with the idea of potentially being able to join Down East Broadband. Now, would it make sense if there's interest from those communities to look at a planning grant to basically get those other communities to the same point that we're at now? Would that be an appropriate route to go if they wanted to join in to get everybody up to the same point?
That's a hard question to answer. I can't say yes or no. If the towns want in and you want the towns to join, then yeah, that would be a great way to go about things, because they'll need that initial level of support. They're at a different place than you are all at. So a lot of that community engagement is going to need to be done with these communities. The state they want broadband for all. They want to fund as many projects as they can with the capacity that they have. And they want to try and get as many residents hooked up to fiber as possible. So ultimately, it's a mixture between having high level designs. So if the Scudic Peninsula had a high level design and it was going to take too long, or for these other communities to get that design work done, or there just wasn't enough there, then it could potentially hold you all back from winning these grants, because there's not enough information there to fund the project. But it could also be attractive in the sense that there are more residents in this area of Down East Maine that are going to get served. So it's really kind of a hard question to answer.
Do you happen to know which of the towns, sorry about that, which of the towns that you're approaching have comprehensive plans or are in the process of working on comprehensive plans? Because they might have information through that. Or if it's a planning grant, I wonder if they would have to have a comprehensive plan to qualify, or at least to make them competitive.
So the only towns that I personally know of that have done comprehensive plans recently are Goldsboro and Winter Harbor.
Mhm.
I'm sure they've been done in some of the other towns as well, but I don't know if they had any focus on connectivity at all.
Yeah. I would be surprised if they didn't, if they were done recently. I know, I can check online to see if there's anything that's been done recently, but I know that there's a big backlog with comprehensive plans, so they might not necessarily be up on the website, but yeah, so I guess we can then see if there's any information there, but that might be something to consider. But we can always reach out to the to the people administering the grants and see if there would be any issues if towns didn't have comp plans, or if you wanted to. I mean, usually they're whoever's in charge is pretty good about answering those types of questions in terms of if including those towns would be an issue or not.
Sandy?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so comprehensive plans do not ask for any connectivity information whatsoever. We purposely entered that in because we knew we were integrating broadband at the same time. So even if the other towns have a comp plan, it's highly unlikely they've asked these questions. The state doesn't ask for that information at all. And I would have concerns about trying to wait and bring everybody up to speed, because we know how long it's taken us all to get to this point. And I was curious how Down East, there are communities that did collaborate and got it going, and now they're being asked by other people if they can join into them. So I feel like it may be best to just continue on, still keeping them in the loop and seeing if there is some way to bring them on, but I wouldn't, I don't know that we need to put so much effort into that. And I mean, EMDC, you guys may have a better understanding of what other larger communities are doing and pulling together.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out who all of the key players are in the area and the different types of projects that are going on. Not all of them are being recognized and they're kind of in the public, sphere just yet. Even I had a little bit of a hard time getting information on the Schoodic committee because it just hasn't been posted about in the newspapers, hasn't been, recognized in a larger space. No, but you know what? It really sounds like you all are in a pretty good place. So I guess it's kind of like the paradox of choice. You have a few different options, which is really good, but we all need to figure out what the best option to go with is.
Okay. Well, I don't know, does anybody else have anything they wanted to bring up for this meeting? So I'm gonna look for an update from Bob. Certainly, Mark, you're in touch with him, so let me know what he's looking at, what his timeline is, and happy to look at his suggestions again, just to reach out to the internet providers and let them know we're looking at this process and we want to see what they can do or what they think they might be able to do. We're not looking for proposals right now. We're just putting the feelers out there, and I will reach out to the area town governments. And no, I agree, Sandy. We're not going to wait for the others to catch up, but if there's a potential to get a larger regional project going, I think there's a lot of work. Like, our work happened very quickly when it actually did happen. We had a very slow start, so I don't think, if we wanted to start bringing them up to speed, we have a survey all ready to go, and we have to just communicate it to the other towns. And even if they don't have comp plans going on, we can do the mailings, maybe apply for the grant, and that would cover some of the mailing costs like we did for Gouldsboro. So I think there's ways to catch them up quickly so we can get some of that parity and move forward together. So yes, and had the good report that she put together for the Gouldsboro Select Board. And so, okay, I erroneously did not update the next meeting date in the agenda, so that is October 25th, assuming there's no changes. I do have a question out to Rhiannon to see if that's going to be 1:30 on the fourth Tuesday is going to be a workable time for her, because she does want to remain involved. So if she gets back to me and has some other times, I will float those by the committee to see what works and what doesn't, just so we can make it as accessible as possible. And that's all I had for today. Well, thank you both for joining. Thomas and Addie, is it 80?
80, like the number.
80. Okay.
Thank you for having us, guys. I hope we didn't impose too much.
Not at all. It's good information. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Nice meeting you all.